coaching students, but seasoned coach also. So she just came to make a turn in the financial coaching world. Hi, Marguerite. Welcome also. And so I asked her because she's very much in the world of Clifton Strengths. And then also we had long conversations previously around values and understanding our clients. And somebody shared this metaphor. I read it somewhere last week where they said if you do not understand your clients' values and what is important for them and what is their strengths and where they want to engage and what gives meaning to their life, it's nearly like going to the airport and don't knowing where you want to fly to. And I think that in my mind, and that's, if we think about our purpose driven financial coaching and planning, in my mind, that's the key of understanding what is important for our clients and where they, before we get on the wagon, where they want to go and who they want to be, and having those conversations. So thanks for being here, Lizelle, and nice to have you. And over to you to share a few thoughts with us. Thanks.
Yes, thank you, and thank you for the invitation. It's really I'm a learner, a life learner, so anything new for me to learn is valuable for me. And learners are often teachers. So being a great learner, I'm always eager to share my knowledge and share my experiences with someone. So what happened 12 years ago when I started with Strenghs, I was actually looking for some development myself, personal development. And I got involved in a coaching situation, in a coaching conversation with someone, and they shared Strenghs with me. And I said, well, this is something that I've got to take out to the world. This is not something that I can just sit with on my own, because I think this is valuable to each and every person in every area of their life. So I actually changed my occupation. I was an optometrist, and I sold my practice, and I started doing StrengthsFinder as my vocation and my hobby and my life. And through Strenghs, I became involved in values and in all of the other assessments that's available to us for self-development. And I also ended up training people in the medical industry, in practices, often people that don't have any other opportunity than what I just have to offer them. You can understand that someone in a medical practice often has a ceiling of development, where self-development becomes the tool of reaching that person in a way that nothing else would. I mean, it's just so much that you can learn in a practice, but there's more that you can learn about yourself and how you interact with other people. So Strenghs became a way of life for me, and it's become something that I desperately need to share with every person I meet. And I think it's valuable for every person. And then I got to last year or the year before, I saw the ad that Hendrik put out on the financial coaching. And my father was a financial advisor, and so is my sister. And I thought, well, I've got some knowledge of the field. Let me see what the coaching is about. And not that I'm coaching as a financial coach, but I have got the background now. And it's amazing to see that it actually just relates to coaching as a whole. It's just the way that you interact with the person sitting in front of you is important in understanding that person. And it's also important for him to understand himself. And this is what this tool can bring to you. Okay, any questions so far? I'm quite happy to be very interactive. So raise your hand if you want to. I'm going to carry on. So what's happening now? Let me just page. Okay, so what I do as a coach and what we all do is we support personal growth to willing clients. So for me, it's important to understand that a client really wants to grow. I can't force anybody to pursue personal growth if they're not interested in it. So what we need is we need our clients to really want it. They must display individual inherent desire to learn more about themselves and the way they interact with the world around them. So what strengths offer then is, for someone like that, is a way that they can actually learn more about themselves and see how they can actually bring something to the world that's from themselves and not from something from someone else. So the two assessments that we'll be discussing today is the Gallup Clifton Strengths assessment and then the VIA character strengths. And just to compare the differences between them. So Clifton Strengths is based on research that Don Clifton did. Don Clifton was born in 1924, very long ago. He was a psychologist, and he developed this. So he went and he had interviews with over 2 million people who was successful in the jobs they did, whether it was teaching or medicine or engineering. And he grouped the people into certain groups only by the way they described themselves. So he looked at the way they would describe themselves, and so, for instance, someone would say he's very empathetic to certain people, or he would be very analytical, and then he would group that people, and then he designed all the terms that they use in the results of the Clifton Strength. And then after that, he designed the questionnaire. And the questionnaire is 177 paired descriptions. So you've got two descriptions in your question, basically, and you have to weigh them against each other. And then the person that does the assessment actually then chooses the answer that best describes himself. The results are then based on what you actually answered yourself. So I'm very often flabbergasted by people saying that they don't agree with the results, because it's really their own answers. And they are listed from the one talent theme, your strongest talent theme, and we'll be discussing the themes just now. So just bear with me in the introduction. So it's listed from your number 1 to your number 34. And then being a business, Gallup sells them then as a top 5 result or a full 34 result. And then the VIA character strengths, I use it as supporting to the Clifton Strengths. I don't use it as a main assessment, but it was developed by Christopher Peterson and Martin Seligman. And Seligman is seen as the father of positive psychology, and also Don Clifton is also seen as the father of positive psychology. So both are based on positive attributes. VIA is also online assessment. It's got 96 statements, and you just weigh your agreement with that statement. It's also based on a set of six virtues, but it lists 24 character strengths. And then again, the same thing happens. You can buy a top 5 or a total of 24 of that report. So that's the basics of that. So Don Clifton asked the question, what will happen when we think about what is right with a person rather than fixating on what is wrong with them? And again, people often might crucify me on that and say, but we need to develop our weaknesses. And there's nothing wrong with developing your weaknesses. I think that Don Clifton only saw that it was easier to focus on what you do well rather than on what you do badly. And Marcus Buckingham used to work with Don Clifton in the book, and he had a famous saying that if your child brings back a report card from school and he's got 2 A's and an F, on what do you focus? And obviously you focus on the F because you don't want him to have an F. But the thing is to support the distinctions, to support your child or the person where he's good at rather than where he's bad at. And it doesn't take away commitment. It doesn't take away hard work. We don't say that you don't have to work hard. You don't have to be committed to something. It's just that you're a better person if you can try and focus on what you're good at. And then I often use a sports person like Usain Bolt as an example. What would happen if he didn't run? He's got a natural talent, but obviously it's his natural talent. He's got the build for it. He's got the speed. He's got the ability. He still needed to train. So we're not saying that you can be whoever you want to be without any training and skill and knowledge. So the word strengths finder means that not the results are not necessarily your strengths already. They are talent themes. They are things that you're naturally good at, that you're naturally inclined to think and feel and react. And then by using skill and knowledge and combining it together with each other, then you become actually talented and skilled in something, and then it becomes a strength.
Lizelle, perhaps,
yes.
sorry, just perhaps a thought on this, what you saying, just is that I think the important thing is you get you know what is your strengths, but you also know what is your weaknesses, and you can understand your relationship with the weaknesses, and you can understand where they get into your way. And I think that's also, if we think about from a financial coaching viewpoint, what is those things that can get out of in our way to become prosperous, etc. So yeah, just a thought that came up for me while you were talking.
Yes, and the important, to add to that, the importance is that even a strength that is mismanaged can be a weakness. So it's not necessarily something that you cannot do. It can be something that you do so well, but you're mismanaging it. It's like being prone to risk. I mean, that can actually be detrimental in a financial situation. So, or being prone to quick decision making and not analyzing enough. If I know that my analyzing ability is low, so I might be a very harmonious person, I might have harmony as one of my strengths, so I just want to keep the peace, then I would just say, yeah, that's fine, we can do that, but it's not necessarily the right decision to make. So what strengths bring to the table is a way of discovering where's the things that you should look out for, but also where's the strengths that make you help other people make better decisions. And then also another concept is that, and that's important for me, there's no well-rounded person. There's only well-rounded teams, and a team consists of 2 people or more. So even you and your client make up a team. So if you can get your client to understand that you're there for him, but he's also there for you. I mean, he has to understand you, but you also have to understand him. And by that combination and that team dynamic that's happening, from there you have better decision making brought into the relationship. Is that okay?
From my side, okay. Thanks.
So what Gallup says is that people, okay, now Gallup is a research organization, so they are very fond of statistics and measurement and making this big. So they say that people who use their strengths are 3 times as likely to report having an excellent quality of life because they actually understand themselves so much better. They're 6 times as likely to be engaged in their jobs. You all have clients that actually just go to work because they have to, not necessarily because they want to. And Gallup also says that people who use their strengths have a 8% greater productivity rate than any other person. So 10% more productive than what you were the day before. If you're a hard worker, you won't necessarily, it won't make a difference because you're a hard worker already. But you can see that in the companies that we sometimes work with, is that the teams who receive a strength feedback are 10% more profitable. So people have a more positive view on themselves, but they also have a more positive view of the people around them. And when we bring that back to your client and you, if you understand where your client's ability to think and feel and behave comes from, you've got a better understanding of the actions that he takes, why he works at night, why he only pays his bills 5 minutes before the deadline time, why he does not provide you with all the information, why he prefers a telephone call rather than an email. So some people, I know of a financial advisor who uses email quite a bit, and she doesn't really like it when clients phone her because there's no record of it. Other people work on a more relational basis where the phone call is most important aspect of the relationship between you and the client. So then we also say that people using these strengths, they actually look forward going to work because they have more positive than negative interactions with their co-workers. They treat their customers better. They tell their friends they work for a great company. They achieve more on a daily basis, and they have more positive, creative, and innovative moments. So the wonderful thing about knowing your client's strengths is actually knowing how they interact and how they work with that. The assessment, okay, Honoree, you asked, the assessment is based on our own concept of ourselves. Following on this, how well do the academics think we see ourselves? Yes, it's based on yourself, because you can't have an assessment and not give your own input. So you can't be assessed if you don't provide questions and answers to some of the questions. So yes, there are people that think a little bit more of themselves than obviously what they should, but that's also a strength. Having self-assurance is a strength. Having significance is a strength. So we try and support the people on what they give us, and we work on that. Okay, so I'm not going to see all the questions in the chat box.
I'll keep an eye on them.
Keep an eye for me, please. I would appreciate that. All right. So the next, okay, the thing that I work with is in the profiles that I use. It's important for me to create self-awareness and self-understanding, self-management, self-growth, and then you get some input, and it turns into output. So for me, the important thing is, if you become self-aware of who you are and who you are not, you actually can work to the other side as well. You get to a point where you have other awareness that is better. You're better equipped to be aware of other people, to understand yourself and the way you make decisions and the way you say things and think about things. It helps you to understand others. The same with self-management and self-growth. So again, if you're a financial advisor, or whether you're a teacher or an engineer, if you understand the way that you are and the way that you make decisions, it's much easier to understand other people. And when I work with teams, it's important to say that, well, if you require other people to understand you, then it goes both ways. So you then have to understand them as well. So in self-awareness, it's the first step to better emotional intelligence. And self-awareness is the first step to understand why you're making the decisions that you are making in a certain way. Right. So again, growth can only happen with all the nutrition given a situation, in a given situation that it is required. And obviously we see that in nature, and nothing can grow without all the nutrients. Nothing can grow with the necessary oxygen, water. The soil must be good. And then the better you supply the nutrients, the better the product will be. Right, so what do these assessments provide us with? And all the assessments do the same. They provide us with a language. So when I look at the Strength Finder specifically, the Gallup Clifton Strengths profile, the descriptions of the talent themes that we get is so easy to understand and relate to other people that it really provides a new language for people to talk about with each other. So what happens is that even if you have a communication problem with someone, Strengths just takes that away. So, oh, I'm so analytical, and oh, I'm so deliberative. So it really provides a safe zone of communication and describing yourself. It's also a starting point for a growth-oriented conversation. It's easy to start a conversation based on a person's strengths. So tell me more about your achiever theme. Tell me more about the fact that you have harmony as a theme. It's also very contextual. So the descriptions provide you a context within which a certain attribute function. And it also gauges your approach, how things fit together. So if the one person has the one theme and the other one has another one, and how they actually relate to each other. And then it also gives you a glimpse into what your piece of the puzzle will look like. So if you are in a team of 50 people, what do you bring to the table? Not necessarily your position, but what role do you play in the team or in the organization or in a group, in any kind of relationship. So they help us actively analyze our thoughts and behaviors and actions, and in order to improve the way we present or manage them in ourselves and others. So what happens is that when we start analyzing the way we are, we then improve the way we present ourselves to other people. And then we look at the pitfalls and we look at what is good. For instance, one of the themes is called a activator. So activators come across as very impatient, but activators can actually start a process sooner than later so that the process can actually get off the ground. So it's little things like that we start relating to what they bring to the table with their talent themes. So if we look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, obviously you've got your physiological needs. Without that, you can't function. And then on that is your safety, belonging, your esteem, and then your self-actualization. And often when I look at this hierarchy of needs, I see an end. I see self-actualization as an end, and I tend to not agree with that. So for me, growth is more like a growth spiral, where you start somewhere, and it might be a little small, but you work with that and you grow on that, and then growth never stops. But your platform of influence enlarges. So you often have to reflect. You put something in motion. So you learn your strengths. You practice that with the people around you. You practice that in your decision making. You practice that on your clients, and it forms a new platform of making new decisions on that. So this is the way I see the value that working in positive psychology works, is that you find something that works well and you build on that and try and make that better. And with that, you start managing the weaker areas and the weaker spots. All right, so when we work with teams, and I'm talking about teams, you and your client is a team as well. We look at alignment. Are you aligned? And how do you bring your strengths to create alignment in what you aim to have to reach? What are your goals and strategies? Are they aligned with each other? Do you have a combined leadership approach, meaning that is one person the leader and the other the follower, or do you have a combined leadership ability where you can actually work together? And then trust. Nothing grows faster than trust. Trust is something that needs to be built. And if you and I understand each other, then we can actually start trusting each other. Respect and trust is different. You can respect someone without trusting them. But do you have respect for the other person and what they offer? And do you have diversity of thoughts, diversity of approaches in your decision making? What is your decision making like? Do you have a very authoritative approach, or do you say, okay, for instance, we need this strength that you have, we need to make a decision, but we're going to be using that one. And then accountability. What is your accountability that you bring to the table? What is your communication and style? And do you have constructive interaction? And then do you have an optimistic camaraderie? Do you have the end goal in mind, being very positive? Okay, I see there's chats. Is there something that I should answer?
No, Jason said he had to drop off, so he loves it. But it's not, he's enjoying it, and thanks for this. So yeah, thanks.
So teamwork, again, I must stress it that you and one person can be a team. It doesn't have to be more than two. Every team has two conversations, the conversation you're having and the conversation that you're not having. So we use strengths and the language of finding your strengths as a way to communicate and to have a constructive conversation, and rather than not having one. So excellence then obviously is not achieved in isolation, and this is something you can also take to your clients to say that it's only in the merging of people's differing strengths that we can actually achieve excellence. Having the same purpose, where teams are aligned, that's where true excellence and success can happen. Okay, so in the Clifton Strengths, and this is now a little bit more technical, just to give you, I don't know who knows strengths. Is there anybody in the group that knows strengths and knows how it works? Has anybody discovered their strengths?
I've done mine.
You've done yours. I don't know, what are your strengths then, Rick? Maybe we can use some of yours as an example.
I'll have to look it up. It's here behind me, so I I can't remember out of my head.
Okay. All right, so the strengths has 34 themes that they describe, that they give a description of, and the 34 are listed in the table that I have on the screen. So it's loosely divided into executing themes, influencing themes, relational themes, and thinking themes. So it's not an exact science the way it's been divided, but it does make sense when you start using that in that manner. So the strengths are obviously listed here alphabetically, and they have names and words and descriptions that we understand most of the time. So most of the time, you will understand what competition means, what focus means, what responsibility means. Includer is very obvious. It's the opposite of an excluder. Learner is an obvious one. But there's some of the descriptions that are not necessarily all that easy to understand because we have assumptions. So we have an assumption around something like belief or deliberative or maximizer. So some of the descriptions are not that easy to understand unless you've read your report. So when you do the Clifton Strengths and you get your report, you will probably have, if you only do the top 5 report, you will have 5 of these words described in your report. And if we arrange them in the 4 domains, they will fall in one of these columns, or in more than one. Some people have 5 in the one column. Some people have them nicely spread out. But there's no, the thing about strengths is they are neutral. So there's none of these strengths are wrong to have. And that's the beauty of it. Just the way that you manage them might not be perfect. Any questions on these? Is there any of the words that you see that makes sense to you or that you would want to ask about? We'll be discussing it just now. Okay, so to use an example of a client. So the client that I'm using as an example, it's not someone that I necessarily remember, and it's also not my own report. You do get a report of 35 pages. It's almost like the money EQ thing where you have a short description paragraph or a 1-pager and then a longer explanation. But this one will, let's talk about this client. Say, for instance, she was one of your clients. She has one of her top strengths is ideation, relator, achiever, futuristic learner. So just looking at her top 5 themes, we call those the signature themes, the top 5. You will see that she will obviously would like to build a strong relationship with you. She has relator, meaning that she likes to trust. And then she also likes to understand you as an individual first. It's a little bit different than down the row in number 31, that is woo, where woo stands for winning others over. That's more the social butterfly type of person, where a strong relator will want to build a strong relationship with you. And being an advisor, obviously, you know that you have a relationship with your client for years. It's not a once-off thing. So this is something that you will understand, that she will need that interaction with you. She's got ideation. So she will probably have new ideas every single week and say, hey, can't I do that? Can't I do that? Can I do this? What about this? What about that? So if you understand that about her and it makes you a little bit frustrated, obviously you can say, look, you have to tone down a little bit on your ideation. And the same goes for futuristic. So people with high futuristic, they often think into the future. They like to make futuristic plans, and they see the future as a destination, and they're very, very visual. So they enjoy reports with graphs and the detail in colors. Then she has Achiever, which is a nice person to work with because they always have a to-do list and they will always get stuff done. They sometimes procrastinate, not because they want to, but because they just have too many things on their list. And then this client is also a learner. So if you need her to learn something about a new product, send her information or help her subscribe to a webinar. What you don't want for her, she doesn't have, now we drop to the bottom. She's not high in discipline now. This was a real client. So for me, it's a little bit weird having Achiever at the top and discipline at the bottom, but you have a 1 in 33 million chance of having the same profile as anybody else. So for this person, discipline is very low. So she's not ordered. She's not structured. So her emails might be all over the place, and it might be because of her ideation. She doesn't have harmony high, so she wouldn't want to keep the peace necessarily. She might just blurt out an email to you and say, what's happening here? And because she might be impatient on that. She's low on communication, which means she might not find the best, nicest words to use in an email. But if you know that about her, then it's easier to focus on the strengths and say, okay, let's see what you do well, and how can I provide you enough information so that you do make better decisions. Okay, so just by looking at this profile, do any one of you have any questions? Not at the moment. Okay, Hendrik, have you? Oh, yes,
Margarita. I see Margarita's got her hand up there.
Yes, I'm wondering, it's quite an extensive list, and in working with this, do you normally then just focus on the top 5, or how do you integrate the more important ones with the ones that are lower on the scale?
Okay, so the thing about Clifton Strengths is that it's because it's based on positive psychology, they actually just focus on the top 5. So they focus on what someone does well. In a coaching relationship, when I engage with a client, then we obviously take the full list and we work on what they don't do well anymore. So say, for instance, you have a client that you really don't understand and they don't understand their own thing, then you can actually bring me in and we have a chat together. We pull their list and we have a full conversation based on the full list. What you can do is focus on the top 5. So the reports that Gallup provide is split into 2. You either get a top 5 report, and it's just 5 descriptive paragraphs, and you focus on that. And that's why it's called positive psychology. The extended list is the way that I show you what is possible. So I show you what is possible. If you really need to get to know somebody, then we do the full report. And we say, why don't you do this? And then we start managing the bottom with the top. So we say, okay, you don't have harmony very high, but you do have relator very high. So how can we actually improve on that relationship so that the low harmony doesn't hinder you in your decision making? And I relate this to a game of golf. If you play golf, you have your fairway, and that's the shortest way to get the ball in the hole. But you also have longer grass, you have got trees and shrubs, and you have got water, and you have got sand. If you play a game of golf and the ball lands in the sand or the water, you don't have to stop playing. You just drop a shot and you carry on. It's just a little bit harder to get back on your fairway. So I often describe the top 5 as the fairway shots. Those are the easiest to get the ball in the hole the soonest. So that's where your client is actually perfectly orientated to perform as a client and where you can understand that client very well. The bottom 5 is the sand and the water. So yes, consistency, she's not into fairness at all. But it's okay. She's got futuristic learner, so she's a good learner. She's an arranger, individualization, responsibility, input, connectedness. You can actually then start working with the top 10 rather than you do with a full 34. So yes, it's extensive. I'm just, for the sake of this webinar, just showing you what is available out there. You can just focus on the top 5. Most companies just do top 5 in any case. It's only when we work with leaders, then we start using the full 34. Unfortunately, there's nothing in between. You can't buy a 10. It's either or. So that was the business decision that Gallup made in selling the either or.
Yeah, I think referring also to the money EQ or FD&A is that most probably I like the top 5, bottom 5, because the bottom 5 is most probably, how does that get in your way? What pain is it causing you? And, what is your relationship with that? And, how can you then use your strengths to compensate for those weaknesses? Because most probably it's not your top 5 strengths that's going to come in your way. It's that bottom 5 that's going to somewhere come in your way or cause you pain. So, yeah.
But it's important when you go back to see that it's self-awareness that actually creates the opportunities to leverage your own strengths. Because if I'm aware that I don't have harmony, or if I'm aware that I'm really not an includer, then I can actually show up as an includer by using my strengths. I can show up as a person supporting harmony by using my strengths. What is fascinating is that my personal strengths profile, if you look at my money EQ profile, and I'm an influencer, and you see the yellow strengths, talent themes in this list, mine's all in the top 10. My influencing themes. So I come across as an influencer, but I also come across as a risk taker in my money EQ, and it shows. So and it's amazing to see how these assessments actually talk to each other, and then you can actually include some of the others like the VIA, but I'll look at that just now. So this client, for instance, she's got a weird profile, I think, because usually you'd find discipline and responsibility together, but it's not, because you have a 1 in 33 million chance of having the same profile as anybody else. And that's what makes it so amazing. So you can't be someone else, whether you want to or not. And the only reason that I prefer this to the Myers-Briggs is that the Myers-Briggs, in the olden days, the Myers-Briggs only reduced you to 1 of 16. Fortunately, they've evolved a little bit and they've expanded that. But if you use strengths, even if you only look at the top 5, say for instance, you only had ideation related, achieve a futuristic learner for this client, the combinations in how these strengths interact in her decision making is profound. How does she decide what time to get up in the morning? What is winning? Is the achiever supporting her, or is ideation supporting her for the day? So it's amazing to see what actually becomes part of the way that she thinks and feels and behaves. But now the next one is related. Okay, so let's add the values in action. So now we look at character strengths, and with character strengths, they combine they group their strengths into the virtues called wisdom, courage, humanity, justice, temperance, and transcendence. So temperance is your ability to self-restrain, and transcendence is your experience beyond the normal physical. Even something like humor is grouped under transcendence, and fairness is grouped under justice. So some of these words, because of our language abilities that we have, we might misread them or assume things about them. But take honesty and creativity, just the two character values, honesty and creativity, and you take that back there. And you say, okay, how does honesty influence her ability to ideate, to relate, to achieve, to have futuristic thoughts, and to be a learner? And then we see how they come together, and we say, okay, but remember, you have honesty, and being honest is very courageous. You have creativity. So creativity is linked with ideation. So when our ideation and creativity is linked, she becomes a very creative person. And it's a value. She values being creative. So she values new ideas and new things. And this is the beauty of it. So we can, I mean, she can just as well be a graphic designer. Because if a graphic designer doesn't have ideation, what do they bring to the table? Oh, but you might have a graphic designer with discipline. So how do they do their finances? Oh, she's probably all over the show. So how do we get her to understand that it's necessary? We go back to this. We say, all right, you need to be creative in the way you arrange your finances. You agree with fairness and you have judgment. You have humor. So often have a conversation with them because she has related. She wants to link with you. She wants to be in a relationship with you. So it's you can see so much about a person in this situation. All right. So for instance, she's got kindness, self-regulation. It's a different ball game altogether. This person probably kindness, self-regulation, perseverance, humor, and fairness. And you relate that back to someone who has related, achiever, discipline, futuristic, responsibility. And all of a sudden, the picture looks different. You've got a person high discipline, where this lady did have discipline very low. So for this person, you've got all your ducks in a row for her. She's futuristic and she has responsibility. So you can press on her button any time of the day. She will have everything on time for you. Okay, any strengths with that? Oh, question, sorry. There's a lot of information here. And the thing about this is that I can only show you a glimpse of what is possible. Because if I have to show you all 2,000 clients that I saw the last few years, then obviously it would keep us busy for a whole year. The thing is that when you combine them, you see the beauty of the individuality of a person and how that influences their decision making. So you have a 1 in 33 million chance of having the same strengths profile. And if you combine it with all the other factors that make up your existence, like nurturing, who your mother is, where you were born, what rugby team you shout for, it's clear that you're a unique human being. So discovering the best way to be is the choice that you make, and how it influences you further on in your life. Okay, and that is the theory. Any questions? And I'm open for discussion. Anybody can ask anything.
So it's more interesting, the relationship between Gallup Strengths and VR. I could not get my hands on my Gallup Strengths, but I work now more with VR. So and also the relationship in my world, I now use Money EQ or FDNA with VR, and it's interesting for me to see those relationships in it. I think the other point was one of your first slides was, it's an assessment again, so it's a conversational tool with our clients. It's about the growth of our clients, so it's not putting somebody in a box. That's what I like about these assessments, and it's about the language that we get a common denominator with the client, and there's nothing wrong or right. Is how do we make this work best for you, and how can you have more choice in terms of where you want to go or what you want to do with your life. So that's what excites me of all these tools that or both these that you discussed, also, Lizelle. So yeah.
Yes, I think the most important thing is that when you get a report, and you just look at the report, you feel boxed, because all of a sudden there's descriptions. But once you read it and you understand the dynamics and you understand the scarceness of having the same profile as somebody else, and then you combine it with other profiles, it's just amazing that the personal growth you get will actually help you make better decisions in future, because you all of a sudden everything is different. All of a sudden you've got a way to explain yourself. All of a sudden, I'll give you a chance now, Renata. All of a sudden you have a different way of looking at opportunities in front of you. Yes, Renata.
Hi, Lizelle. Thanks for a very interesting discussion. Can you tell me the difference between individualization and relator? Because I've got both of those in my top 5.
Okay, so relators, obviously, the way I describe a relator would be like a bull's eye. So I can't draw it for you now. So people with high relator often have a very small and intimate group of people that they trust and that they actually know them well. So very often you have 2 or 3 people in your inner circle, and you might know 1,000 people closely, but the intimacy that you have with these people will differ. So relators often have a very small, intimate group of people that know them well. They sustain friendships for extremely long years, times. You will still be friends with people that you met in primary school or even earlier. Friendships usually with a relator last well over time and space and distance. So strong relationships are good. And then individualization is the way that you approach the individuality of another person. So you appreciate the fact that people are individuals. So it doesn't necessarily mean that you will be intimately friends with a person. But when you do engage with people like clients, you are more open to see their individuality than would someone be with low individualization. But being a relator, you might not invite them in your closest circle immediately. Does it make sense?
Okay, yeah, thanks.
So what usually happens with individualization, they are extremely good at figuring out who belongs where. Say, for instance, you have to set up a task team to do a certain project. Individualization would be the person I would call on to say, help me figure out who must do what, because you have the natural ability. Being a relator means that you and I can have a very intimate friendship, whether it's at work or privately. And I might know things about you that other people might not know, and that's the way you operate. Relators often, I had one client who had relator as a number 1 theme, and he was in the IT business, and he came to see me 3 times to build relationship before he signed up as a client. So does that make a picture clearer for you?
Yeah, but I also think that's the kind of person that will, when they build a relationship with clients, that 20 years down the line will still have a relationship with that client, even though they may not still be doing business. That client will still reach out to them and go, listen, by the way, what is your view on this particular thing?
Yes, that's precisely correct. What also happens is that a person with high relator, they need an extremely trusting relationship, and they often walk away when the trust is broken.
Yeah, fully agree.
Okay. Yeah, that's probably the statement that I make that gets the most nods when I talk about relators. Anything else? Okay, I see Marguerite had to leave.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. How do you get to know what your strengths are? How do you sign up for that? It's free to anybody on the internet. You can sign up with VIA to get the values strings, the character strings. Okay, so there's another question that I can ask that nobody asked, but I will ask it just now. Just remember it. The Gallup one, unfortunately, you have to pay for. It's 380 Rand, South African Rand, for the top 5 report, or it's let's just get my values right. I think it's 1,000 Rand, 1,000 and something Rand for the full 34. It hasn't become that much more expensive than it was 10, 12 years ago. If you don't want to do it on your own, you can ask me and I can sign you up. I'll do all the hard work for you and just send you the instructions. That's what I usually do for my clients, because there's a lot of red tape involved in signing up. And then you can start with the top 5, discover yourself, your signature themes. Gallup calls it signature because when you sign a document, you just give your signature. You don't give a full resume. The same with VIA. VIA is available online, so it's quite easy to access. And the questions are very simple. Let me just quickly show you this, what the questions look like. So when you do the when you do the Clifton Strengths, this is what it looks like. It's a paired description. So it will, funnily enough, it will say, I read all of the instructions before I start with something, or I just jump in, and you just have to weigh between the 2 answers, your answer. So it's got 5 buttons, strongest on the outsides to neutral in the middle. And then your VIA will look like this, where it's got a statement and you will say mostly me, very little me. So that's how that looks. And then people ask me, can it change? All right, so if you're quite into statistics, that Gallup has got extensive research on the validity of repeatability. It is repeatable and it is valid, but I've seen a lot of changes. So if you only do a top 5 and 5 years down the line, you do another top 5, it might look completely different. And you might be extremely shocked because you thought you were the same person you were before. And the same goes for VIA. The value lies in conversation and talking about the changes. So when you start comparing the changes and you put the 2 reports next to each other and you see what happened in your life from then until now, and you can actually explain it, then it's far easier to understand the changes. It does have a repeatability, but it might not be ranked at a number 5 or a 6. So, for instance, I had Achiever at number 6 in my first test, and Achiever showed up, I think, at number 4 in my second test. If I didn't do the full program, the full 34, I would have thought I did not have Achiever, but I had it at 6. It just didn't show up in my top 5 profile. So very often we are envious of someone else's themes, but they might just be there at 6, 7, 8, 9, or 10. They might just not be at the top. So the value in the full profile, I think, the higher your leadership level is and the greater influencer you are, it might be more important to do the profile fully and really get a full view on your profile rather than just the top 5. If you've only done the top 5, it's easy to upgrade it. You don't have to repeat the test. You can just pull the report. And is it necessary to repeat the test the second time round? It's up to you. I tried not to be biased. We talk about bias in the financial coaching environment quite a bit. You think you're not biased, but you are. It's impossible not to be biased by the questions. Once you've answered it a first time round, the second time, you do think about your answers more than you did the first time round.
Just on the VIA, you can also register for the financial, for everybody of you on the call, you can register a professional account with them. And then the benefit is if you send a link to a client and the client completes it, you also have got access to the report. There's a, like Lizelle say, there's a free report, which is basically a list of the strengths or of the values in a list, and then you can upgrade the report to a paid report. That's also, I think now the new report is quite a nice report. I did one the other day, but I think it's, if you convert it back, it's like 400 Rand or something like that. So it's also not too expensive, but yeah.
Yeah. On the VR, it's $19 or $49.
Yeah.
You know, look, these things cost money because they do, not because it's because someone else is making money of it, because they've put in the hard work. And we know we can't have anything for free. So obviously they try and catch you with a free version, but the value lies in getting the reports.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Lizelle, for your time, and everybody that joined us, because it would have been very boring if just myself and Lizelle was on the call. Thanks also to everybody joining us. And next month, we've got Prince is going to share with us the presentation he did at the Financial Therapy Association, the relationship between African psychology and financial therapy. I think it will be an interesting discussion. So yeah, looking forward. That will also then be our last one for this year. And then we've already got a very interesting conversation going for January also. So looking forward to that.